I'm not proud of this, but for the longest time, I genuinely believed my neighbor Dave was the worst person on our street. You know the type. The guy who always has something to complain about, the guy who somehow notices everything, your trash cans being 2 inches too far out, your car parked slightly off center, your lawn being just a little too long. The kind of person who makes you feel like you're constantly being watched, judged, evaluated. That was Dave. He lived right next door to me for about 2 years, and in that entire time, I don't think I ever saw him smile. Not once. He had this permanent expression on his face, like the world had personally offended him and he was still holding a grudge. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd stand on his porch with a cup of coffee, just staring. Not in a friendly, good morning kind of way, more like, I see what you're doing and I disapprove. And the worst part, he didn't even have to say anything. That look alone was enough to make you second guess yourself. Did I park wrong? Is my music too loud? Is my dog barking too much? It got to the point where I'd actually feel a little tense just stepping outside if I knew he was out there. Now, to be fair, Dave never really did anything directly to me. He never came over yelling, never left angry notes, never started any arguments. But I'd heard stories. Oh, I'd heard plenty. The couple across the street said he once reported them for leaving their trash cans out too long. The guy 2 houses down swore Dave had measured how far his fence extended over the property line. Someone else claimed Dave complained about kids running through yards. So yeah, I built this image of him in my head. A bitter, overly strict, rule-obsessed guy with nothing better to do than monitor everyone else's lives. And once you start seeing someone that way, everything they do just reinforces it. If he looks at you, judgmental. If he sighs, disapproving. If he says nothing at all, somehow even worse. I won't lie, I avoided him. If I saw him outside, I'd pretend to check my phone or suddenly remember something in the car, anything to avoid eye contact. Because in my mind, there was nothing to gain from interacting with Dave. Only criticism, only awkwardness, only that uncomfortable feeling of being evaluated. And then, last week happened. It was a completely normal day, nothing special. I got home from work a little later than usual. Traffic was bad. I was tired, just ready to eat something and zone out. I parked my car, grabbed my bag, and walked over to the mailbox. Bills, junk mail, the usual. But then I noticed something different. A plain envelope. No stamp, no printed label, just my name written in slightly shaky handwriting. Immediately my stomach dropped because I recognized that handwriting. Dave. And my first thought, oh great, here we go. I actually stood there for a second just staring at it, debating whether I even wanted to open it, because in my mind there were only a few possibilities and none of them were good. Maybe he was complaining about my dog, or my parking, or the fact that I sometimes got home late, or something I hadn't even realized I was doing wrong. That's the thing about people like Dave, or at least the version of Dave I had built in my head. You always feel like you've done something wrong, even when you haven't. I let out a sigh, went inside, dropped my bag, and sat down at the kitchen table. The envelope just sat there in front of me. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than just paper. Finally, I opened it, and when I read, completely threw me off. It was just a short note, simple, straight to the point. I've noticed your car's brake light has been out for a few days. Just wanted to let you know before it becomes a bigger issue. Dave. That was it. No complaints, no passive-aggressive tone, no hidden message, just information. Helpful information. I actually read it twice, then a third time, because it didn't make sense. This didn't fit the image I had of him. This wasn't the neighborhood watchdog Dave. This was someone looking out for me, and I didn't know what to do with that. So I went outside, walked straight to my car, turned it on, pressed the brake, got out, walked to the back, and sure enough, the brake light was out, completely dead. And suddenly my mind started racing.
How long had that been like that? How many times had I been driving around without realizing it? How easy would it have been to get pulled over, or worse, cause an accident? That tiny note might have saved me from a serious problem. And for the first time since I'd moved in, I didn't feel annoyed when I thought about Dave. I felt grateful, but also a little uncomfortable, because it forced me to confront something I didn't want to admit. I had been wrong about him. Completely wrong. And not just a little wrong. The kind of wrong where you realize you've built an entire narrative about someone without ever actually giving them a chance. So I sat there for a few minutes just thinking about all the times I'd avoided him, all the assumptions I'd made, all the silent judgments, and it didn't sit right with me anymore. So I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I walked over to his house. Each step felt weirdly heavy, like I was crossing some invisible line. When I reached his door, I hesitated, then knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there he was. Same expression, same posture, same Dave. He looked at me, slightly surprised. "Yeah?" For a split second, I almost backed out, almost said, "Never mind." But instead, I held up the note. "Hey, I just wanted to say thanks." He glanced at it, then back at me. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he shrugged. "I figured you'd want to know." That was it. No big speech, no smile, just matter of fact. And somehow, that made it even more genuine. "I didn't even notice," I admitted. "So, yeah, I appreciate it." He nodded. "Doesn't make sense to drive around like that. Someone could hit you, or you could get fined." Again, practical, straightforward, not warm, but not cold either, just real. We stood there for a second, a slightly awkward silence. Then I said, "Still, thanks." And for the briefest moment, I swear I saw something change in his expression. Not a full smile, but something close. "Yeah," he said, "no problem." I worked back to my house, but everything felt different. The street, the air, even my own thoughts. Because once that image of Dave started to crack, everything else started shifting too. All those things I thought were annoying. What if they weren't? What if he wasn't trying to control people, but just cared about order? What if the complaints I'd heard weren't about being difficult, but about wanting things to be safe and fair? What if the staring wasn't judgment, but just observation? Or maybe even concern? It's funny how one small moment can completely change your perspective. Nothing about Dave had actually changed. He was still the same guy, same habits, same personality. The only thing that changed was how I saw him. And that made me realize something uncomfortable, but important. We don't always see people for who they are. We see them through the stories we tell ourselves. And once those stories take hold, they're hard to break. But sometimes, all it takes is one small, unexpected act to remind you that you might have been wrong all along. So, yeah, maybe Dave is still a little grumpy. Maybe he still complains. Maybe he still stands on his porch and watches the world go by. But now, I don't see a jerk. I see someone who pays attention. Someone who looks out for things others might miss. Someone who, in his own quiet, blunt way, cares. And honestly, that note in my mailbox, it said more about him than anything else ever could. So, moral of the story, yeah, it's simple. Don't judge a book by its grumpy cover, because sometimes the people you expect the least from are the ones quietly looking out for you the most.